Amidst luxury and appearances, a single gesture can change destinies. Imagine a gala night where pride, vulnerability, and courage intersect beneath the lights of a grand mansion. Camila, an heiress marked by solitude, and Rafael, a security guard used to living in the shadows, watch their worlds collide because of an unexpected act of protection. Among whispers, glances, and social masks, a connection is born, one capable of challenging everything both believed about themselves and the world around them. This is a story about respect, boundaries, the desire to be seen, and the power of silent choices. Enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to follow every twist of this exciting story. Share in the comments. How far would you go to protect someone? The mansion's gates loomed like a fortress at the edge of the city, golden initials shimmering under soft lantern light. Inside, a world of tapestries, crystal, and discreet conversation unfolded. Tonight's charity gala was the most exclusive event of the year, and every glance, every smile, was a carefully choreographed movie in an endless dance of power and pretense. Camila Montero, heiress to a media empire, stood at the edge of the grand hall, a vision in red silk. Her poise was flawless, her eyes sharp, her beauty as much armor as ornament. She scanned the room, smiled distant, her fingers brushing the stem of a champagne flute. The crowd buzzed with gossip, but Camila was used to being talked about, rarely to being truly seen. Behind her, unseen by most, stood Rafael Menezes. Broad-shouldered, silent, his tie black as his gaze, he was not one of the elite. He was the security, hired discreetly by Camila's mother, whose paranoia was as legendary as her fortune. Rafael's only instruction: make sure nothing happens to my daughter, no matter what. He had expected danger, trespassers, thieves, obsessed fans. Not the slow, insidious poison of whispers or the sudden silence that fell when Camila approached a group of laughing socialites. "Camila, darling," cooed Teresa, a childhood frenemy in pearls. "We thought you wouldn't come. After your fiancé? Well, you must be so brave, facing everyone." The comment slithered, sharp as a blade. Camila's jaw tightened, but she smiled, defiant, practiced. Before she could speak, Teresa leaned in, louder. "I heard he left with the maid. Is it true?" A hush spread. Camila's chest burned, her pulse a drum in her ears. She had endured scandals, but this was cruelty wrapped in sympathy, calculated to wound in public. She opened her mouth. From the shadows, Rafael materialized, his voice low but clear. "Ms. Montero, your mother requests your presence, urgently." Camila blinked, startled. Rafael's eyes locked on hers, steady, unreadable. For a moment, the two worlds collided, hers of privilege and isolation, his of duty and sharp vigilance. Silence stretched. Teresa gaped. Camila exhaled, nodded, turned away. Her retreat dignified, her pride intact. Rafael stayed close, his body edging between her and the whispering crowd, a shield unspoken but unmistakable. Outside, the garden smelled of jasmine. Camila stopped, arms wrapped tight around herself, finally alone. She turned to her silent guardian, voice trembling. "She didn't call me, did she?" Rafael shook his head. "Then why?" A beat. "Because," he said simply, "no one deserves that." Camila looked at him, really looked. He was more than a uniform, more than a shadow. He had just risked his job, his name, to save her, not from a bullet or a knife, but from a humiliation she would never forget. The night was young. The city glittered unaware. But something had shifted. Two strangers, separated by class and fate, had touched, for a moment, a kind of honesty rare in castles made of velvet and gold. Camila's hands were steady as she fixed her hair in the bathroom's mirror, drawing breath after trembling breath. The mask of composure slipped only when she was alone, safe behind locked doors. Tonight, humiliation had almost consumed her, but a stranger, a shadow, had offered her shelter without asking for anything. She pressed her palms into cold marble, willing herself to believe the evening could end with dignity intact. Rafael stood guard outside, leaning against the gilded wall, his face unreadable. The corridor hummed with the distant pulse of the gala, but his attention never wavered from the door, as if he could feel the weight of Camila's silence through the wood. He had broken protocol, stepped beyond his role, and though the job was only a means to an end, he wondered how much further he was willing to push for a woman who, hours ago, was a stranger. A soft knock. He looked up. Camila stood in the doorway, eyes red-rimmed but dry, her spine straight. "Thank you," she said. Rafael nodded, unsmiling. "No thanks necessary." Camila hesitated, then surprised herself. "Come with me then. If you're my shadow tonight, stay close." Side by side, they walked back into the gala's golden heart. The whispers swelled, then fell silent as Camila passed. She felt every gaze, every smirk, but with Rafael at her shoulder, the weight was different. It was not safety, but presence, an ally in a world of knives hidden in silk. The host, an aging magnate with slicked back hair and a false smile, intercepted them. "Camila, darling, you left so suddenly. We were worried." Camila felt her stomach twist, but Rafael shifted subtly, his arm almost touching hers. She drew strength from the nearness, the unspoken promise, "No one touches you tonight." She raised her chin. "A matter of health, nothing more. Thank you for your concern." The man's eyes flicked to Rafael, sizing him up. "And who is your companion?" Rafael met his gaze, unflinching. Camila smiled, cool. "My security. He works for my mother." The message was clear. Touch me, and you answer to the Montero Empire. But as Camila mingled, she noticed something strange. Rafael did not just watch. He listened. He noted the way certain guests avoided her, the way others watched with envy or pity. He was not a robot. He was a man, absorbing the rhythm of a world he had only ever seen from the outside. And once, when a server almost spilled champagne on her gown, Rafael's hand shot out, steadying the tray, a gesture unnoticed by everyone but Camila. She shivered. She wanted to ask, why? Why go so far? But the answer was in his eyes, in the set of his jaw. He had not intervened out of duty alone. He had seen her pain, and he had chosen to stand between her and the wolves. As midnight approached, Camila felt a shift, not relief, but something quieter, something new. She was still bruised, still angry, but for the first time in years, she did not feel entirely alone. And as they made their way back to the grand atrium, Camila wondered if this quiet guardian, this man of few words, would vanish along with the night, or if he was the first line of the rest of her story. Rafael, for his part, watched her profile in the lamplight. He knew this was not just a job. This was a crossroads for both of them. But how far would he follow her, and would she even notice if he did? The limousine glided through rain-slicked streets, its windows tracing neon reflections across Camila's tired face. She had left the gala in silence, ignoring the lingering stares and whispers. Rafael sat in the driver's seat, his eyes flicking occasionally to the rearview mirror, watching not just for traffic, but for the weight in Camila's gaze. "Where to, Ms. Montero?" he asked, voice neutral but not unkind. Camila hesitated. The penthouse, with its curated loneliness, felt suffocating. The family estate, with its endless questions, was worse. She exhaled, watching raindrops race down the glass. The park, the one by the river. Rafael gave the smallest nod and turned at the next intersection. The car slipped into the city's shifting pulses, away from light and spectacle towards shadow and stillness. They rode in silence. not the uneasy quiet of strangers, but the layered hush of people who have shared something unnamed. The park was deserted, its trees black fingers against the grey sky. Camila stepped out, leaving her shoes in the car, the damp grass cool under her feet. She walked ahead, arms wrapped around herself, the drizzle misting her hair, her dress clinging with the weight of the night. Rafael followed at a distance, giving her space, but close enough to be called if needed. He watched her pause at the river's edge, her posture both taut and fragile, a woman caught between armor and surrender. For a long while, there was only the sound of water and distant city hum. Then Camila spoke, her voice almost lost in the rain. "Do you ever feel invisible?" Rafael stepped closer, not answering right away. He was used to being unseen, part of the job, part of the world's design. But tonight, he had been seen too. Not as a shadow, but as a man. "Sometimes," he said, "but sometimes it's better that way." Camila turned, her eyes searching his face as if reading a map. "Not tonight. Tonight, I wish I could vanish, but you saw me, really saw me." Rafael held her gaze, the moment stretching between them, raw and real. He wanted to say something about dignity, about strength, about the quiet courage it took to stand alone in a crowd, but words felt cheap beside the honesty of silence. Instead, he stepped forward, offering his jacket. Camila didn't take it, but she didn't look away either. The rain softened, the city's glow catching in droplets on her lashes. "Thank you," she said again, but this time it was different. Not gratitude for a job, but for a moment of being known. Rafael nodded, and for the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not duty, not detachment, but a guarded kind of hope. They stood there, two figures by the water, the night wrapping around them like a secret. Camila felt something shift inside her, not relief, not escape, but the faint, unfamiliar pulse of connection. She didn't know what came next. She didn't know if this fragile understanding would survive daylight. But for now, in the quiet and the rain, she was not alone. And Rafael, the man paid to be invisible, found himself wanting, just once, to be seen. Camila awoke late, tangled in silk sheets, the city's hum distant through double-glazed windows. The rain had stopped, but her bedroom felt heavy, dense with unspoken questions, the ghost of the gala still clinging to her skin. She stared at her phone, ignored a dozen messages, and threw back the duvet with a sigh. She showered in scalding water, scrubbed off the memories as best she could, and dressed deliberately. Jeans, boots, a sweater too big for her, no red silk, no armor. If she was going to re-enter the world, she would do it quietly, almost invisibly. No headlines, no scrutiny, just Camila, unadorned. Downstairs, the housekeeper greeted her with concern, but Camila waved her away. She brewed her own coffee, poured it into a chipped mug she'd stolen years ago from a roadside diner, and sat at the kitchen island, staring at the city framed in glass. The morning was bright, almost mocking. She wanted to resent it, but couldn't. The world moved on, indifferent to her bruises. A noise in the hallway made her tense. Rafael appeared, dressed not in the night's black suit, but in a simple navy shirt, jeans, boots. He looked younger, almost ordinary, except for the way his eyes flicked over the room, assessing, protective. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough from sleeplessness. Camila nodded, gestured toward the coffee pot. He poured himself a cup, hesitated, then sat at the island's far end, mirroring her posture. Shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around warmth. They sipped in silence, two people who had seen too much but still hadn't found the words. Camila spoke first. "Did you sleep?" Rafael shook his head. "No, but I'm used to it." She studied his profile, the faint scar above his eyebrow, the set of his jaw. Up close, she could see his exhaustion, the weight of old battles she'd never know, never have to fight. There was something comforting in the knowledge that he too was human, flawed, tired, real. "You could have just done your job," she said softly. He met her gaze, unflinching. "I did." The coffee burned her throat, but she drank it anyway, savoring the ache. "No, you went beyond. You stood up for me." Rafael's fingers tightened around his mug. "People shouldn't be cruel." She laughed, bitter. "You haven't spent enough time in my world." A shadow passed over his face. "I've seen enough." Camila wanted to ask, but something in his eyes, a darkness, a warning, stopped her. Instead, she stood restless. "Come on, I need air." Outside, the city was alive with traffic, birds, the laughter of children in the park across the street. Camila inhaled, let the world rush in, sharp and overwhelming. Rafael stayed a pace behind, watchful but silent. She didn't look back, but she could feel him, his presence steady, solid, anchoring her to the present. They walked aimlessly, past cafes and bookshops, beneath trees that dripped with last night's rain. Camila let herself blend into the crowd, just another woman with messy hair and secrets. No one recognized her, no one cared. It was terrifying, exhilarating, normal. She stopped at a bridge over a narrow canal, leaned on the railing, watched the water ripple beneath. Rafael joined her, so close their sleeves brushed. The intimacy was unplanned, unforced. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Thank you," Camila said finally, "for last night, for now." Rafael didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet, almost lost in the city's noise. "You're strong, you don't need me." She turned to look at him, surprised. "Maybe I do, not just as security, as, I don't know, a friend." He blinked, as if the word were foreign. "I don't do friends." Camila grinned despite herself. "Everyone does friends, Rafael, even you." He shook his head, but his mouth quirked, almost a smile. Across the canal, a vendor called out, selling hot bread. The scent of yeast and butter drifted toward them, warm and comforting. Camila felt something inside her shift, lighten. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about inheritance, scandal, or expectations. She was just here, with a man she barely knew, watching the city wake. She realized abruptly that she wanted to show him something real, a piece of her world, outside the gilded cage. She wanted him to see her not as a heiress or a headline, but as herself. Camila touched his arm, impulsive. "Come with me. There's somewhere I want to go." Rafael hesitated, but only for a second. Then he nodded. They went back to the car, not the limousine, but Camila's old convertible, hidden in the garage beneath a dust cover. She threw back the fabric, tossed Rafael the keys. "You drive?" He frowned. "I'm your security, not your chauffeur." She arched an eyebrow. "Today, you're both." He took the keys, slid into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirrors. Camila slipped into the passenger side, pulled off her sweater, tied her hair back and looked at him expectant. "Where to?" he asked. She smiled, real, unguarded. "Someplace honest. You'll see." The engine roared to life. The city stretched ahead, full of promise, secrets, and the faint, impossible hope of something new between them. The convertible tore through the city, the wind snatching at Camila's hair, her laughter blending with the roar of the engine. Rafael gripped the wheel, his posture rigid at first, every sense alert, scanning for threats even in this stolen moment of freedom. But the highway was empty, the sky a deepening blue, and for once there was no one to protect Camila from except herself. She watched him from the corner of her eye, the way his jaw relaxed as the miles rolled past, the tension in his shoulders easing, just a fraction. Rafael Meneses, the man whose life revolved around vigilance, was learning, slowly, to let go. Camila felt a strange pride in that small victory. She directed him off the main road, onto a narrow lane that wound through fields and forests, away from skyscrapers and spotlights. The air smelled of earth and rain, not exhaust and ambition. When the car finally stopped, it was in front of a weathered cottage, its porch sagging, its paint peeling, a relic from another life, hidden from the world. Rafael turned to her, eyebrows raised. "This is honest?" Camila smiled. "This is home, or it was. My grandfather built it. No staff, no security, no pretense, just silence." She led him inside. The cottage was cold, musty, but alive with memories. A faded quilt on the couch, a dusty piano in the corner, photographs yellowing on the walls. Camila traced a finger over one. Herself, a child, barefoot in the grass, carefree. She had almost forgotten that girl. Rafael stood in the center of the room, incongruous in his navy shirt and boots, a city wolf in a countryside den. He said nothing, but his eyes were full of questions about her past, about why she had brought him here, about what this meant. Camila busied herself with opening windows, letting in light and air. "My mother hates this place," she said over her shoulder. "Too small, too plain. But when I was little, this was where I was happiest. No cameras, no rumors, just me." Rafael walked to the piano, ran a hand over the keys. "You play?" She shook her head. "My grandmother did. She taught me a little. But mostly, I just sat with her and listened. She used to say music was the one thing you couldn't fake." He looked at her, really looked, and she felt suddenly exposed, not as Camila Montero, heiress, but as Camila, the woman beneath the armor. She had brought him here to show him something real, but now that he was seeing it, she wasn't sure she was ready. Rafael broke the silence. "Why did you bring me here, Camila?" She hesitated, then crossed the room to stand beside him. "Because I wanted you to see me. Not the name, not the label, just me." He studied her face, searching for traps, for games, but found only honesty. For a man whose life was built on mistrust, it was disarming. "I see you," he said at last. "I've seen you since the gala, maybe even before." Camila's heart stumbled. No one had ever said that to her. Not like this, not with such quiet certainty. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the space between them, but years of conditioning held her back. She was used to being desired, admired, envied. She was not used to being seen. Outside, the sun began to set, painting the fields gold. Rafael turned away, walked to the window, watched the world without comment. Camila joined him, their shoulders almost touching. "What's your honest place?" she asked softly. He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, almost reluctantly, "A rooftop in Belém, my mother's building. You can see the whole city from there. When things got bad, that's where I went, to remember there was more than just survival." Camila nodded. She had never thought of him as having a life beyond his job, beyond her world. But here, in this cottage, with the silence stretching between them, he was suddenly real. A man with a past, with scars, with secrets of his own. They stood together, watching the light fade. Two people who had spent their lives standing apart now for the first time, standing still. The city was far away, the gala a distant memory. For a few stolen hours, they were just Camila and Rafael. No titles, no roles, no expectations. As night fell, Camila lit a fire in the hearth. The flames cast flickering shadows on the walls, painting the room in warmth and mystery. Rafael sat on the floor, back against the couch, his guard finally truly down. Camila handed him a glass of rough red wine, then settled beside him, close but not touching. "You don't have to stay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He took a sip, let the flavors roll over his tongue. "I know." Silence. Then, gently, Rafael reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. It was a small gesture, almost hesitant, but it sent a current through her, bright and terrifying. Camila looked into his eyes, saw her own reflection there, not a heiress, not a headline, but a woman, flawed, hopeful, alive. For the first time in years, she let herself want something real, something unnamed. The fire crackled, the night deepened, and in the quiet, something new began. Not a promise, not a confession, but the faint, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, honesty could be enough. The morning after, the cottage's stillness was broken only by birdsong and the distant rumble of a delivery truck. Camila lay curled on the old couch, tangled in the quilt her grandmother had stitched decades ago. Rafael, asleep in the armchair nearby, his breathing slow and steady. For just a moment, the world outside, the gala, the empire, the cameras, felt like a dream, half remembered. Camila watched Rafael's face in the soft dawn light. She had spent years surrounded by men who wanted her wealth, her name, her body, but never her, not really. Rafael was different. He saw her without the filters, and in return, she found herself watching him with a curiosity that bordered on tenderness. But what was next? What did it mean to be this honest, this unguarded, then return to the world that demanded performance, not truth? Rafael stirred, blinked awake, and for a second, their eyes met. No pretense, no protocol. Then reality settled between them. Both looked away, uncomfortable with the weight of the night's unspoken admissions. The silence that followed was not the silence of connection, but the uneasy quiet of two people who had glimpsed something deeper and now feared losing it. Camila rose, busied herself with coffee and toast, the routine providing a familiar distraction. "Hungry?" she asked, her tone deliberately light. Rafael nodded, stretching stiff muscles. Always. They ate at the kitchen table, the sunlight painting golden squares on the worn linoleum. The coffee was too strong, the bread a little stale, but neither cared. The simplicity was grounding, a reminder that life could be this plain, this real. "You never told me how you became a bodyguard," Camila said, breaking the silence. "You don't strike me as the type." Rafael studied his mug, weighing honesty against professionalism. "I wasn't," he admitted at last. "I grew up in Belim, used to be a cop, saw too much, too young, burned out. Security was a way out, a way to use the skills without having to care so much." Camila absorbed this, seeing the lines around his eyes, the faint scars on his hands, the shadows she knew he'd never fully explain. "Why my mother? Why me?" He looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because sometimes, even in this life, you want to believe you can still protect someone from getting hurt. Not just from bullets. From everything else, too." Camila swallowed, the truth of his words settling in her chest. She wanted to say, "You have. You did." But the words got caught somewhere between her heart and her throat. Instead, she asked, "What now?" Rafael exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You go back to your world. I go back to mine." It was the expected answer, but it tasted bitter. Camila stood abruptly, paced the small kitchen, her mind a riot of questions. What was left for her in the city, in the empire that had never really felt like home? What was she, if not Camila Montero, heiress? Who was she, if she let herself want something, someone outside the golden cage? She stopped, turned to face him. "What if I said I didn't want to go back? Not yet, not now." Rafael's eyes narrowed, searching her face for signs of delusion, of escape, but finding only clarity. "You can't run forever, Camila." "I'm not running," she said, voice low, steady. "I'm choosing. For once, I'm choosing." A long silence stretched between them, charged with possibility, with fear, with hope. Rafael broke it, standing, moving close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not close enough to touch. "Then I stay too, as long as you need me, not as security, as something else." Camila nodded, heart pounding. For the first time in her life, she sensed a door opening, not into another gilded room, but out into the open air, into a life where she could be both strong and fragile, both heiress and woman, both alone and together. They spent the morning wandering the cottage grounds, talking in snatches of laughter, silences comfortable now, not weighted. Camila showed him the creek where she'd waded as a child, the apple tree that never bore ripe fruit, the porch swing where her grandmother had taught her to read. Rafael listened, asked, remembered, not as a hired shadow, but as a man, a friend, maybe more. By afternoon they packed bags, casual clothes, water, the old quilt. Camila hesitated, then slid a single photograph from the piano, tucking it into her pocket. Rafael waited, patient, silent. The car's engine rumbled to life, a protest and a promise. They drove south, away from the city, toward the coast, toward uncertainty, toward whatever would come next. The sun blazed, the road stretched, and for once, Camila Montero didn't look back. She was leaving, yes, but she wasn't running. She was following the quiet insistence of her own heart, following the silent strength of the man beside her, following the hope that perhaps at last she could be free. The coastal road unfurled before them, a ribbon tethering past to present expectation to truth. Camila and Rafael drove in silence, the radio humming jazz, the wind stealing their unspoken thoughts. The city was behind them, the gala a faded photograph, their newfound honesty as fragile as sea glass. Rafael glanced at her, Camila, unarmored now, fingers loose on the wheel, eyes on the horizon. He had known countless clients, countless exits, but never one that felt so irreversible, so inevitable. He tried to remember the last time he'd made a choice for himself, not as a bodyguard, but as a man. The answer stung. He couldn't. Camila turned sharply, drove down a sandy track, parked at the edge of a deserted beach. The waves crashed, relentless. She killed the engine, let the silence swell. "This was my grandfather's too," she said, almost to herself. "No one comes anymore. It's mine now, I guess." Rafael watched her, waiting, always waiting. Camila stepped out, walked across the dunes, her boots kicking up sand. He followed, pulse thudding in his throat. She stopped at the water's edge, toes curling in cold foam, and looked at him. "Why are you really here, Rafael?" The question, blunt and true, hung between them. Rafael felt the old urge to lie, to slip into the easy script. "Because it's my job. Because your mother pays me." But the words burned in his mouth. He was so tired of pretending. "I don't know," he said, voice rough, "but I know I couldn't let you face that alone." Camila's eyes shined, not with tears, but with a clarity he'd rarely seen, the clarity of someone who finally sees herself, unmasked. She stepped closer, close enough that their breath mingled in the sea salt air. "I was always alone," she whispered, "until last night, until you." Rafael's world narrowed to the feel of her hand brushing his, tentative, seeking. He let himself be found, let himself touch her back. For the first time in years, he was not protecting, but present. She reached up, cupped his jaw, pulled him down. Their lips met, soft, testing, then deeper, desperate. The kiss tasted of salt and promise, of old fears dissolving, of something wild and new unfolding. Rafael lost himself in the heat, in Camila's fingers tangling in his hair, in the way she pressed against him, no longer distant, no longer untouchable. For a heartbeat, the world was only the two of them, the crash of the surf, the heat of skin on skin. But as suddenly as it began, Camila pulled away, eyes wide, breath ragged. The truth roared in. They were still a heiress and her bodyguard, still bound by rules, roles, reputations, still living in a world that would never allow this. She took a step back, her face a riot of hope and fear. "I can't do this," she said. "Not yet. I don't know how." Rafael nodded, swallowing the ache, the longing. He didn't argue, didn't beg. He just waited again, because that's what he'd always done. Camila looked at him, really looked, and saw the hurt beneath his mask. She wanted to explain, to say she needed time, to say she feared losing herself, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she turned away, walked the shoreline alone, leaving Rafael in the surf, watching the tide erase footprints, watching hope recede with the waves. Inside, both knew the kiss had shattered something old, revealed something new. Now came the question neither wanted to answer. How much could they risk? How much was love worth, really, in a world built on walls? The sun dipped lower, painting the ocean gold and shadow. Rafael watched Camila's silhouette blur in the distance, both hearts raw, both minds racing. The first kiss was over. The first battle, the battle with themselves, had just begun. The aftermath of their kiss lingered between Camila and Rafael like a scent upon the wind, sweet, aching, reluctant to fade. Days passed at the cottage like pages torn from a dream. They spoke in half-finished thoughts, in stolen glances, in gentle routines, coffee, walks, silent dinners. Camila did not apologize, nor did he ask her to. The kiss had cracked something open, a floodgate. And now, with each shared sunset, each accidental brush of fingertips, something deeper began to flow. Camila would lie awake, watching moonlight paint the ceiling, wondering, could she really escape? Not just the gala, not just the Montero empire, but the weight of expectation, the fear of being known and of being found wanting. She thought of Rafael's hands, his quiet strength, the way he had stepped between her and the world's cruelty. She thought of the last man she had kissed, her fiancé, with his easy charm and empty promises. Rafael, too, was restless. He had never wanted more than survival, never dreamed of belonging to a world that had always rolled its eyes and opened its gates for the rich, the beautiful, the Camilas of the world. But she was different. She had shown him her scars, her fears, the little girl who had once run barefoot through the fields behind this cottage. He wondered, in the quiet hours, if he could be more than a shield, more than a shadow. One morning, Camila found Rafael on the porch, lost in thought, watching a pair of hummingbirds spiral above the garden. She sat beside him, close enough that their knees touched, and said, almost too softly to hear, "What now?" He did not answer immediately. The hummingbirds vanished into the light. "I don't know," he admitted at last, "but I know I can't go back, not to silence, not to pretending, not even for you." She studied his profile, the set of his jaw, the scar above his brow, the way he held himself, always ready for a blow. She wanted to reach for him, to say, "Come with me. Let's disappear. Let's be unknown, untethered, unafraid." But the words felt too big, too raw. Instead, she whispered, "I'm not ready either. I want to be, but I don't know how." Rafael exhaled, long and slow, and took her hand. "Then we'll stay here until we are." And so they did. Two fugitives from different worlds, bound by a promise neither could name. They read books aloud by the fire, swam in the creek at dawn, learned each other's stories without judgment, without demands. Camila told him about the loneliness of childhood, about the mother who demanded perfection, about the father's absence, invisible but never forgotten. Rafael spoke of Belém, of the rooftops and the hunger, of the brother lost to violence, of the badge and the gun and the hollow victories. With each confession, the walls between them crumbled a little more. Camila looked at Rafael, not as a guard or a shield or a refuge, but as a man, brave, flawed, beautiful. He, in turn, saw past the gowns and headlines, past the gilded cage, to the woman beneath, yearning for connection, for home, for honesty. Weeks blurred into months. The city's murmur grew fainter, the empire's demands almost forgotten. They celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, seasons, not with champagne and caviar, but with laughter, with rain on the roof, with hands clasped in the dark. One evening, Camila woke with a start, disoriented. The cottage was quiet, Rafael's hand resting on her waist, the window open to a sky full of stars. She slipped out, walked to the porch, and stood barefoot in the dew-damp grass, listening to the night's infinite hum. Suddenly she understood. She was no longer waiting for his kiss, for his rescue, for his permission to be herself. She had become herself, fully, truly, in spite of fear and uncertainty and every doubt that had ever whispered in her ear. Rafael joined her, his touch familiar, his silence a question. Camila turned to him, her heart brimming, and said, "I'm ready." He searched her face, her eyes. For what? She smiled, radiant, unafraid. For everything. They stood, not as prisoner and protector, not as heiress and bodyguard, but as equals, partners, lovers, finally free to choose the world they wished to build together.